I've been busy checking out more layouts using the Half Hexi template. This one's for layer cakes and this is put out by Moda. Last week I showed a video on how to use the Half Hexi to make a Scrappy Hexagon quilt. Last week's quilt was a beautiful quilt and I really liked it, but I want to keep exploring other layouts before I decide which one I'm going to make. Now this layout behind me I'm really liking. There's another layout that I'm going to consider too. Who knows, I may end up making two quilts. If you've used the Half Hexi template, it doesn't have to be the Moda one, but if you've used a Half Hexi quilt, please be sure to tell me about it below. Tell me which layouts are your favorites. And if you've made some, please go to my Facebook group called the Simple Quilters Community Showcase and post a picture of it. I love to see what all of you are doing out there. Today I have some additional tips. If you haven't made a quilt using the Half Hexagon template, be sure to watch last week's video because I gave lots of tips on using this, and today I'm going to give you some more tips on using this template. The first tip I want to mention is to pre-starch your fabric. And the reason that I am suggesting that you pre-starch it is because two sides are going to be on the bias. And when you pre-starch, it helps control the stretch when you have blocks with a lot of bias. And you're going to have quite a bit because you're cutting on the bias on both sides. So the first tip is to pre-starch. Now I pre-starch because I'm going to make this quilt bigger and I kind of ran out of fabric, so I had to pre-starch some more. The second tip is to use your design boards. Once you have your Half Hexis cut out, put them on your design boards. I had some here, but you can see I'm running a little low on fabric. Here you can see the whites. But use your design boards. And the reason I think this is such a good idea is because it's so much easier to lay them out and grab them and put them up on your design wall versus having to shuffle around or have them spread out all over. This way, when you're done, they just stack up nicely. They just stack up nicely and you don't have them laying all over the place. So the second tip is to use your design boards to organize your Half Hexis once you have them all cut. Now on the sides here, don't forget you can cut this in half. You can just cut them in half and then that gives you two pieces and you can piece the sides that way. I'm running low on fabric, so I'm probably going to have to do that. Now originally I thought I would just cut the excess off to whatever size I wanted because I don't want to do a zigzag. You know, I don't want to do that zigzag binding. You could, but that's not what I want to do. I'm going to cut it off straight and put the binding on that way. But don't forget you can cut these in half to line up for your edge and you won't have to waste that extra fabric. Like I said, at first I didn't think that was going to be a big deal, but since I'm running low on fabrics and this is a hard line to find, I'm going to have to be a little careful with the fabric I have left because I want to make it larger for our bed for Christmas. The next tip I want to share with you is one for piecing these together. Now when you piece these together, these do not line up perfectly. These little tabs on the end, they don't line up. So what I've had to do, I enlarged my stitch size to 5.0 and I just practiced a little bit to try to figure out just the right spot for piecing these. And you may have to rip them out, but the more you do it, the easier it is to figure out that little sweet spot for getting these to line up so that when you open them up, you know, one's not a little bit higher or lower than the other one. Now you can see here in this one I've done a large basting stitch, and it's lining up just fine. So don't get too frustrated with that. You're going to maybe have to practice just a little bit. The next tip I want to show you is how to press. Now this is important because these are on the bias here and right along here, you need to handle them carefully and you need to press them carefully. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the seam. I'm going to press it to the dark side, and I'm just going to do a little tiny finger press gently right there. Then I'm going to take my iron and I'm just going to set it down on there. And of course you can use your clappers if you'd like, if you have them to use. Seam. Now if you want to give it a little spray with just a spray bottle, that's going to be fine because you've already pre-starched it and it's already shrunk. And you can just give it a nice press like that. But don't, push the iron back and forth as you're ironing, or you're going to stretch out your block. There you just have that beautiful pressed seam. So handle carefully, press carefully, and press it nice and flat. Another tip I wanted to share with you is when you start to lay this out, I started with a flower in the middle of my design wall so that I could expand out. I didn't draw this one out or sketch it out, I just put it up there. And remember that your pieces are going to be sewn in rows, so be sure you've got them in rows. When I first put it up there, I had my seams going this way and I couldn't figure out what was wrong, and then it's like, oh, I have them turned wrong. So be sure your seams are going straight across. Since this is a hexagon, see, you could put it up here like that, and then the seam's going that way. So be sure you have them going straight across. If you watch my videos regularly, you know that I do a stay stitch around the edge of my quilt top. I do it in about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and I do that to help control stretch and bias, especially as I'm handling it to clean off the loose threads on the back, and I do it to help it be a little bit easier for the quilter. But I don't want my quilt top stretched out of shape, and because there's so much bias in this quilt, you want to be sure that you do that 1/8 of an inch stay stitch all around the edge of your quilt. The nice thing about using the Half Hexi template is that you don't need a pattern. You just have to lay it out on your design wall, and you just add it until it's as big as you want, and that works really great if you're doing a scrappy quilt. Now I use yardage. I didn't use 10-inch squares. I used yardage, and I cut my strips 4 3/4 inches, and I could get 5 half hexis per width of fabric. So for making one flower, you're going to need 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 hexis. And in order to get 12 hexis, you are going to have to cut 3 4 3/4 inch pieces. So if you cut your strips 15 inches and then subcut that into 3 4 3/4 inches, then you're going to have enough to do one flower. So that really is about 15 inches of fabric, 15 inches by the width of the fabric. The width of the fabric's going to need to be, the full width, the 40 to 42 inches, in order for you to get 5 hexis. So if you have 15 inches of fabric by the width of the fabric, the full width of the fabric, you'll have enough to make the outside of one flower, and then of course the inside takes 2 half hexis. In the comments below, be sure to tell me if you like this layout better or last week's layout better. If you have any tips for using the Half Hexi, regardless of the size, please be sure to share that in the comments below. Others do read those comments and everybody can learn from those. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And until next time, have fun quilting.